Hey kids, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well, and welcome to another classic bike review here on the channel. Today I'm riding a motorcycle that's not exciting, it's not exotic, but it was very much a classic around the time that I learnt to ride a bike. This is the Bandit 650 from Suzuki. It's from 2005. Stick around, stay tuned, I'll tell you all about it. Alright, this bike is old school. When you start it, you need to give it a little bit of choke. There we go. It is slightly warm already, so I can probably just use the choke back off. There we go, choke fully out. Right, okay, let's get this show on the road then. So, the Bandit 650 then. A classic in my eyes, because this was a bike that was recommended to me as one that I should consider buying as my first big bike when I learnt to ride back in 2012, or when I got my licence anyway. And this was one of those favourite bikes of the time. A 4-cylinder 650. It was only made for a couple of years actually before it was superseded by some updates. And prior to this, the Bandit had been around for ages in 600 guise form. But a real workhorse of a bike. So bikes like this, the Kawasaki ER6, the Phaser from Yamaha, Honda Hornet, and indeed the bike I ended up buying, which was the Yamaha XJ6 Diversion at the time, were all bikes that sort of fit the bill. But this is one that I never actually got to try. Let's come around here. And I always wondered if I was missing out. So really pleased to be having a ride on the bike today. Alright, before we get too carried away, let's take a look at the bike, shall we? See what we're dealing with here. So here she is, the Suzuki Bandit S. This is the 650 model, and this is from 2005, so 17 years old, would you believe? Absolutely incredible. Love the design of this, actually. It is, I suppose, of its day, but it's got this sort of, they call this a bikini fairing, I seem to remember at the time. It does a great job of keeping the wind off you, more of that later. Nice silver mudguard on the front as well. Engine looks old school. We've got an oil cooler at the front there, but also, you know, largely air cooled with a carburettor as well. Lovely big exhaust, again properly old school. Yeah, I think it's a handsome looking bike, nothing complicated about it, very simple, and a good honest motorcycle. Alrighty, so that's what she looks like. Let's find out what she rides like. As I say, nothing exotic about this bike. It's a proper workhorse, old school, no electronics. It's a great bike to get you to work. It's a great bike to have as a winter hack maybe, or indeed that first big bike if you're just starting out. So I'm doing a sort of a reverse commute today, because this is the kind of urban environment that this bike is perfect for. Slow speed through town like this. It's carburetted and it's absolutely beautiful at slow speed. No hesitation, no jerkiness, beautiful on the throttle. One of the things that this bike was known for was its simplicity of looking after, so a great bike to maintain yourself as well. And so silky smooth with that 4-cylinder engine. Let's take a look at it. So here it is, a 16-valve inline 4-cylinder 656cc engine, puts out 77 brake horsepower and 44 foot-pounds of torque. So not going to win too many races, but perfectly adequate for the sort of role this bike was invented for. So much for what that engine looks like, but what does it feel like? Well, I've already said at slow speeds it feels beautiful. We'll wind her up a bit more up the road. But yeah, normal riding speed is lovely and smooth, of course, as all 4-cylinder bikes are. It's got a great note to it as well. These types of bikes, you do have to wind up to get the power out of them. But when you do, like this, they sound fantastic. So it always sounds like you're going everywhere in a hurry on these, even though you're not necessarily, and that is what gives them a bit of the fun, actually. So if you are starting out on your learning to ride journey, great bike to learn your craft on, because you're not going to get in too much trouble. But at the same time, you are going to have a bit of fun because they sound great. But most of the time, you're going to be, these sorts of bikes were used historically for this sort of thing, drudging through. It's a horrible day today. You see the autumn leaves are up still. Yeah, I know you're probably watching this video a lot later than this. I'm recording this in November. And it's a scuddy, cold day, wet leaves on the deck. Just the sort of real world riding that these bikes are subjected to. So how's the thing feel from a comfort angle? Well, I have to say it does feel very comfortable. The seat on here, nice and padded, nice and large as well. Let's take a look at that. So here's that perch. It's, as you can see, a two-piece unit, and it's quite narrow here, so it means you can get your feet down nicely. It's only at 780 millimetres, so it's nice and low. So if you're short, vertically challenged, a bit like I am, I'm 5'8", I can get my feet flat on the deck, no problems at all on there. Nice, comfortable place to be. So yeah, that seat, brilliant. And then the riding position itself, nice and comfortable. I'm sat not bolt upright. I am upright, but not bolt upright. I've got a slight lean forward, no real weight on my wrist though. I've got a bit of an acute angle here at the leg, which I actually like. Having your feet directly below your backside on the pegs means if you need to, you can take the weight off your bum, and means that you have no weight on your wrist. So you can ride on this bike for absolutely ages. If you had a particularly long commute, that wouldn't be an issue, or indeed if you wanted to take the bike touring, then you could do so, because you could ride this all day long in comfort. It's a beautiful riding position. Handlebars are quite nice and wide. Yeah, nothing wrong with the comfort on this. And the other great thing, talking about comfort, is the weather protection. You've got this great fairing on here, this big screen, and it really does a good job. I've been riding the bike for the last couple of days, and when you're going at speed, I'm sat in my infamous bubble of calm on this bike. There's a little bit of wind noise off the very top of my helmet, but no buffeting. It's very smooth airflow, so no problem there. So great weather protection. And the handling itself is lovely. As I say, at slow speed in traffic, the fueling is just beautiful on here. These engines, MCN famously described as bulletproof actually. And they do ride lovely. Given this one is 17 years old, I mean, honestly, it feels almost brand new. I can't imagine it felt any better the day it was born. And the weight of the bike as well is just held nicely. And talking of weight, this one comes in at 201 kilograms. And when I say the weight is held nicely, I mean it doesn't feel top heavy. The bike doesn't feel like it wants to tip in if you take corners slowly or anything like that. It's just all very neutral. That's what I like about the bike, really. It's kind of a neutral feeling bike. Gearbox is nice and snickable. Nothing wrong with the gearbox. I would say the clutch is quite heavy compared to modern day bikes though. You do have to give that quite a yank, but you get used to that. It's really not a problem. The brakes on it, the front brakes, do take a bit of a yank actually, but the back brake, I have to say, is absolutely excellent on it. It's one of the best back brakes I've come across. Let's have a look at the brakes on this thing. So at the front we've got these twin discs. These are 290mm discs, and they've got what look like two pot calipers on there as well. And here's that excellent stopping rear brake. I don't know why they put the calipers down the bottom where all the crud can fall in, but there we go. On some bikes you get that. Single pot caliper on here. This is a 240mm disc, but actually it's got a massive pad on there. That might explain why their rear brake is so good. Alright, so we've established she stops and goes well, because she handles well in slow speed traffic. We need to find ourselves a slightly faster road and wind her up a little bit. We'll do that in a minute. But the suspension on here is lovely. Very simple suspension, of course. So not too much to say about the suspension. It is very simple, but it looks like it does have a little bit of adjustment. If you look at the tops here, I think we've got some preload and rebound adjustment, and then on the rear we've just got adjustment for preload. Can you just see in there as well, in the usual way? So yeah, basic suspension, but does the job. How does it feel when you ride it? And the way that suspension feels on the road is nice. I mean, nothing complicated about it. It's simple suspension as you can get, but the way it's set up, again, is nice and neutral. It's not too hard, it's not too soft. It's what I would call in that Goldilocks zone. It's just right. What about the controls on the bike? Well, here we go. Very, very simple. This is a proper old school bike. No electronics here. Well, bar the LCD readout perhaps, if you class that as electronics. But on the right handlebar, your starter, your kill switch. On the left hand you've got that choke, you've got your lights, and obviously indicators and your horn, and that's it. So no riding modes, nothing like that to complicate what is a pure ride on this machine. Mirrors work really well on here. Look, maybe a little bit stalky, but they give you a great view out the back. Again, practical comes to mind. Their mirrors I would describe as kind of automotive. They're the sort that if you had these stalky mirrors on the front wing of an old car, they wouldn't look out of place, but they work absolutely great on this bike. So this machine at Superbike Factory, this one's got 8,272 miles on it at the moment. Probably will have been sold by the time you see this video, but this particular one was for sale around 2.5 grand, so cheap as chips motoring. Cheap to buy and cheap to run as well, and cheap to service yourself. But talking of Superbike Factory, they are sponsors of my channel, so thank you very much to those guys for lending me the motorcycle. Do go and check out their website. I'll put a link below to it, but it's superbikefactory.co.uk. They are the biggest second-hand bike dealers in Europe, I believe. They've always got about 2,000 bikes in stock, so their website is a thing to behold. I spend hours just looking at that for bikes. As I say, this bike will probably be long since sold by the time you're watching this video. But if you're interested in, well, any bikes basically, from anything up to 20 years old to new, then go and check out that website, because they have absolutely everything there. If you go in there and you stick Suzuki Bandit in the search engine, they're about to have a handful of this sort of bike still available. Not just this, the 650 variant, but its bigger brother, the 1200 that came along later, or was it the 1250 as well? So the question is, does this bike hold its own today in terms of being perhaps a winter hack, if you wanted just a second bike to get you to work during the winter, or the summer for that matter, or a bike to learn your craft on? And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. I think learning to ride once you've passed your test on a 600 or a 650 like this is a great idea, because you can have fun on a bike like this. When you wind it up, as we will do in a minute, you'll hear the engine, it sounds great, so you can have fun on it, but they're not so hideously powerful they're going to get you in trouble, so it makes an awful lot of sense as a first big bike. And I have to say, the riding experience does remind me very much of that old Yamaha XJ6 Diversion that I had, a 600cc four-cylinder bike, very similar, that I had as a first big bike, and it served me well. Alright, just coming up to a little bit of dual carriageway here, so we can just see how that wind protection is when we're going a little bit faster. Here we go, and listen to that engine wind up. Sounds absolutely epic once you give it some revs, and it's quickly up to 70 miles an hour, and there's loads more to give as well. So if on your commute to work you do have some motorway or some faster roads, then this bike, no problems at all. It can sit all day long at 70 miles an hour, as I say, with loads more to give. And yeah, I've got basically no wind in front of me here. Really good wind protection off this big fairing on the Bandit as well. So I love the fact that bike manufacturers used to give bikes names instead of weird sets of numbers. Bandits, Phasers, Hornets, all good stuff. And I for one would love to see Suzuki bring a Bandit back. I'd love to see a four-cylinder Bandit as well. There's been this thing recently, hasn't there, of so many new bikes coming out that are parallel twins. Now, I've got nothing against parallel twins per se, but I just think we're missing an experience by not having this sort of mid-sized bike in four-cylinder form. Yes, you can get a few. There are still things like the CBR 650, or the CB 650R from Honda, and also, of course, the Z900 from Kawasaki, four-cylinder bike. But there aren't very many, and there certainly aren't new ones, as bike manufacturers are having to make the most of their investments in new engines. They tend to be going for twins, don't they? And if you've not tried a four-cylinder of this size, do so if you can, because you're in for a real treat. They're great fun. So I've really enjoyed getting reacquainted with this older style four-cylinder bike. 17 years old, still feels excellent. Nothing to not like about it, actually. I mean, of course, you've got no electronics, no modern gizmos, and you may not like the looks of it, I don't know, but you can't argue with the price of it. You can't argue with the smoothness of the engine, the ease of riding, and the value for money that one of these would give you. Anyway, thanks again to Superbike Factory for making the review possible. Thanks to you for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've owned a Bandit in the past, do stick your comments below. Love to know if you think I've missed anything important, anything we should know about the Bandit 650. Stick it down below and we'll build a bit of resource for prospective buyers to look at. If you've not done so already, do hit that subscribe button. It'd be great to have you along on the next video. Alright, until next time, this has been the Mist and Fly. Cheerio.